folks, here we are. It's gale force winds, and we are in Stephenville, Newfoundland, and we're talking green hydrogen. I am here with Wayne Howlett. Wayne Howlett and I went to business school together. Wayne is an important figure in Stephenville. He's done a lot of different things, volunteer work. Rather than me talk about Wayne, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, thanks, Jerry. Yeah, you're right. I'm here. I'm actually a fifth-generation citizen of Bay St. George, Stephenville. Grew up here. My great-grandfather farmed and fished this land. Yeah. And my grandfather, great-grandfathers all farmed and fished this land. My mom and dad raised a family on that land. I raised a family in this area. My wife and I we're still here. And I want to see it continue. And I want to see our rural communities be able to thrive. Because this is not about today. This is not about me and you and anybody else. This is about the future. It's bigger than us. It's so much bigger than us to have an opportunity in a region to grow and develop, not only on an economic level, but a social level, on a socio-economic level. And with that growth comes better healthcare, better services, better roads, better everything, because the population demands that. You get better services, you get better offerings from a business perspective of goods and services that you're going to need. You get more competition, which is always a good thing. So I think the status quo, if we don't do anything to grow this area, we don't get economic growth, and we all choose to stay in the status quo, I think the status quo gives you one thing, guarantees you one thing, and that's the end. Yeah. That's what it'll give you for your communities, rural communities in particular. We see it all the time. Our history is marred with that across this province, of land and sea productions with concrete foundations left and bits of wood around it that was once a thriving community. So why did that happen? Because the only industry there, being the fishery, died. Communities didn't grow into the future. People moved, people died off, communities are empty. And I think if you stay the status quo, we've learned from history, it guarantees you one thing in a community, small rural communities in particular, it guarantees you it's going to be the end at some point. Development and industrial development on the west coast of Newfoundland is limited, right? We don't have any industry here. We got a paper mill in Corner Brook, and and that industry is, that's
closing down for Christmas actually this year.
There's some media reports about some things going on with that industry too. Yep. We've experienced that in Stephenville and Grand Falls. We lost those mills and those opportunities. So this is probably our only last chance for a huge development in our area, was going to see economic growth to a level where there's going to be tremendous jobs in the construction phase for all of this province. The GDP growth in Newfoundland, Labrador alone in this construction phase, is estimated to be $800 million, billions of dollars, with this type of investment. So with that comes job opportunities. It comes, amongst the other things I've already mentioned, but job opportunities for people here, people who are living away and want to come back here, grandparents that have their grandkids just down the street or over in the next neighborhood, not 4,000 miles away, trying to make a living, seeing them once a year if they're lucky. We want opportunities where those young families blend with our older people, because that's the continuity you're going to get in communities, which diffuses the things I've just discussed. So it's critically important that we think bigger than ourselves, because if we think small, we're not going to grow, and we're not going to have that economic growth, those opportunities. And like I said, our rural communities, how are they going to survive 15 years from now? So that's the way we have to look at this. And when we look at the bigger picture of hydrogen production, clean energy production, Jerry, and green energy, we have an obligation, each and every one of us, to the planet, to our communities, to our people, to our future generations, to do what we can to make this a more sustainable life, healthy life, make sure our planet gets on the right track to be more healthy, recover from some of the damage mankind has done to it. And this is an opportunity to contribute to that. So it's not just the economic benefits and everything that comes with that, but it's also an opportunity to change our direction and the way we've polluted our planet. And not all countries are there yet, not even close. We have several countries on the planet who continue to pollute. But worldwide, we have to get that focus. That's a much bigger picture. But for this area, you want better healthcare, you need economic growth. You want better social life, better services, goods and services, better roads, better infrastructures, you need development. Now in 1945, my mother was a young person in 1945 when the Americans arrived here for the first major developments, right? 700-800 people here farming the land, thousands. And she often told me that there's no way, they just couldn't fathom what was happening. Not much media in those days or communication. And thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people came here and moved houses and moved farms and developed and created an Air Force base. We know with hundreds and hundreds of fighters and military aircraft.
Yeah.
And, so you can imagine that transition in a very short time. And Stephenville not only, and Bay St. George not only survived that era, but thrived from it. And we are today, 80 years down the road, a result of that type of development. And in those days, they got away with too much, as we know. There's too pollution, standards.
Yeah.
In those days, it wasn't there. Today, it is. Our indigenous peoples are involved in this, Jerry, which is great. And today, we hold companies accountable. And companies know they need to be better citizens than they are.
Yeah.
They're doing wonderful things to try to help. And our peoples now are part of those companies through our indigenous groups are represented in many major industries now. And we're getting the benefits, and we're making sure that our environment is number one concern going forward.
So Wayne, it's obvious that you're incredibly passionate about this. You are a leader in the community, you're involved, you've had businesses in this community. Just to summarize, what does it mean to you to have a project like this in your hometown?
It's incredible. There's at least $6 billion initial stage, maybe a $12 billion plus investment here over the next several years. Again, I guess like my mother as a young person in American base days, still can't fathom the full development of it until we see it. And I think all of us are in that boat. Unless we've lived through a major type of development like this, probably don't and can't appreciate it until it really happens. But, and it goes to compromise. If you want to survive the future, you want your community to survive, you want better services for your community, for yourself, for your families, for your children in the future, you have to compromise. Business has to compromise.
Yeah.
So nothing's perfect. So if you want to develop, you want a better life, we all have to compromise. And by that, I don't mean that we turn our backs on environmental pollution or anything like that.
No.
Companies have to step up their game and make sure if it costs more money to do something that's safer for our environment, then that's what you're going to have to do, because we're going to demand that. And that's the compromise. So more investment to do things right. We're going to be better stewards of this project going forward as a people. We're going to ensure our people get their due benefits, and we want to make sure our environment remains our number one concern.
Wayne, I got to thank you for being on Gale Force Winds, talking about green hydrogen. I know you're a leader in this community. You and I met 30 years ago, and all I've ever heard from you is positivity. So put her there, man.
Great. Thanks for being here. Wonderful sharing this in our community with us. Thank you for your company to be here today and to be part of it.
It's our pleasure to be here.
Thank you.